Right, everybody, we've got a good guest on today. We've got Karl Marriott from Marriott Succession Planning, and basically we're going to be looking at kind of Karl's plans and the rest of it. So he does this kind of holistic kind of approach to will writing, estate planning, all that kind of stuff. But actually, he really, really wants to grow his business so he can get into the classic position of working on the business, not in it, but he's got some really big hurdles to overcome. So he's got imposter syndrome, he struggles to delegate things out, and he really needs to start focusing in on what his core audience are and building those moats around him and believing in himself. So let's get stuck in. Go and get yourself some coffee or whatever, or a cup of tea, and we'll have a nice little chat with Karl and see if we can help him really address some of his kind of hurdles that are helping or not helping him expand his business. Right, everybody, we've got Karl Marriott here from Marriott Succession Planning, and we're going to be talking a little bit about Karl's kind of journey, his business and so on, and what he does, and then looking at some of his kind of ambitious plans for the future and maybe some of the hurdles, kind of standard sort of podcast stuff. Very interesting to see what kind of Karl and what your business is, and so if you want to take it away and tell the audience in a kind of elongated elevator, imagine we're going up the Shard rather than...
Up the Shard, a long way.
So you've got more than 60 seconds.
Fantastic. Okay. So in its current structure, basically Marriott Succession Planning, I think I need to go back a little bit really and then come forward to where it was. So I got into estate planning in 2018, or will writing really as it's kind of really referred to initially, and started off doing really fairly simplistic kind of wills, power of attorney, kind of, what loads of people do. And I actually realised relatively quickly how bad a lot of people are at doing it, or maybe just they didn't know, or it was something, and how much more opportunity there was. So obviously, as lockdown and COVID kicked in, we were a fairly popular industry. People sadly were dying and were thinking about it. So I had a real opportunity to speak to a lot of people and kind of grow into different spaces, which was unexpected for me at the time. I didn't know these things were coming forward. But, more problems arise. And as each sort of client turns up with something new, you kind of lean in towards that a little bit more. And, of course, with bigger, better things and a bit more money comes with it. End of 2023 into 2024, I sort of changed the structure around of what I was doing and turned it into the succession planning side. So, of course, I still write wills. Of course, I still do power of attorneys. But I'm really leaning in towards more directors of companies, and then a little bit of kind of possible company structures. There are many entrepreneurs out there who just don't even know these things are even required. They don't know how, problems in this area will cause them problems down the line. And particularly sort of joint directors, you've got kind of co-directors, not having a power of attorney in place, and something happening to one of them would be a nightmare. So it's really then taking that through with them and then actually kind of building a little bit more on their exit strategy as well. So, obviously whether it's leaving it to their children, it depends exactly on what their industry is and how and what their structure is. But, I love sort of following that process through, working out what might be their exit strategy, what they might want to do when they retire. Do they want to retire? Do they want to retire at 50 or work till they're 80? And then look at all the sort of legal bits inside of that. Yeah. And obviously financial bits inside of that. Obviously with a lean in towards making it a bit more tax efficient, a bit more cost effective, what time you do certain things to make these things happen. So, we then bring in kind of tax efficiencies and, obviously, it's still based around estate planning to a certain extent, but it's just now expanded right into that kind of market.
So it's like estate planning encompassing the kind of entrepreneurial business JV type partner arrangement.
That's the kind of bit I enjoy because they're kind of my people. That's how I've been. I've been sort of self-employed most of my life. Yeah. And I know, again, we'll come on to this at some point, I'm sure, but, all the trials and tribulations that come with that. And obviously when you just grow and you take on someone new and a couple of staff and it's all exciting, but no one's actually really supporting you through those early stages. You've got an accountant who will do some of that, and you're like, you might have a financial advisor who will do a bit of that. But they tend to sort of stick in their own lanes. There's no one really holistically looking at the whole thing.
Yeah, joining those people together and making sure the accountant is talking to the pensions provider essentially, rather than them just saying, pensions are a good thing because I'm your accountant.
Well, exactly that. And it might not be the best thing. they think is the best thing because that's what they're used to.
Yeah.
But there are lots of other options, and then it depends whether it's
So this is what you've done, like when you've gone out on your own? How long has that been?
Yeah,
for?
literally. Well, so I say 2018 was when I started writing wills, which was the fairly simplistic end of it, and I kind of fell into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Accidentally. I sort of had a bit of a change of career. I spent 17 years doing project management in construction. So again, for a company, then for myself. So all of that kind of fed into it. And really took a couple of years out, actually, sort of 2016, 2017, I kind of disassociated from everything a little bit, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And then really looked at what I was doing. Actually, if I'm honest, I did Uber driving for a couple of years, about 18 months. Really enjoyed it, if I'm honest, but it's not a career. It's not giving you enough to,
It's a side hustle, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly that, and it works well for many, but it gave me a bit of a space to sit back and look at what I want to do. An opportunity in will writing came up, and I just did a course on it. Who knew there was courses on it? You can.
You have to have a qualification, don't you?
Well, no, actually, technically you don't. It's a completely unregulated business, or sort of will writing is completely unregulated.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, of course, is anyone can write their own will. If you can scrap a paper, and you sign it and things, that's a will.
Yeah.
But again, it's getting that correct and making sure the right things are in there for someone. I did a basic course with the Society of Will Writers, which is one of the trade bodies, I guess.
Yeah.
Did this course, really. Actually did it online initially. Did go back and do it in-house with them. You just learn to sort of write a basic will. Yeah. But again, there's so many gaps in that knowledge still that you don't know yet because you haven't come across the problem. And like I say, I found the problems more exciting than the turnover of business.
Yeah.
There are a lot of companies out there who will just smash wills out left, right and centre.
Like the problem solving.
That's what I enjoyed.
Like the peculiar situations.
The more complex it became, the kind of more fun it was, and the deeper into someone's life. I'm nosy, I guess, but that's part of the problem. Yeah, I like kind of digging into a little bit of actually working it out. And again, the clients don't know what they don't know, so they don't know what until you ask it and then tease it out of them. They don't know, and I really enjoy that part.
And how do you go about getting your first client, but also now where the business has changed a little bit? How's that kind of pan out and work?
Initially, I was tied in with a friend of mine who was a mortgage broker, literally, who actually took the course. Yeah. And he said, I was chatting to him about taking the course. I didn't know beforehand he was taking it. And we were just chatting about it, and he said he's done it, but he hasn't really got time to actually do it. And I was just in that sort of empty space of saying, I've got some spare time, I quite sort of enjoy that thing. I haven't actually done it with my parents not that long ago. Before that, I kind of enjoyed a bit of the process with them. And an old family solicitor who I just thought was not very good at it, I kind of just had an affinity with it. So it came up and I said, well, if you've got clients, I'll learn to do it. I'll start writing some for you and as a side hustle effectively to a couple of other bits. And I just sort of really enjoyed it. And that side hustle then turned into everything.
And where does we touched upon it at the beginning about kind of joining that pensions provider, accountant, maybe the will writing bit. Like where does your role sit in that, like in terms of now, on that journey? So say if you're talking to someone like me, I'm a typical business owner profile. I've got my accountant of you, somebody's poached me at a networking event and I've signed up for a pension with them. I've been paying into it for years, don't really understand it. And I've got a will that protects my wife, I think, and an insurance policy.
Again, there's always a slight problem first. There's always, I don't get involved until somebody realises there's a little bit missing. But I pitch myself as actually sitting above all of those, but not replacing them, just, again, looking at it a bit more holistically. I would say, as the will writer, estate planner, people generally trust me a little bit more because they think that I am, but the impression is I'm helping them save money and I'm helping them protect their families, etc. Whereas potentially, the accountant, as much as they might be kind of friendly and good, actually they're just really doing it for the money. At the end of it, they're just really
Yeah.
You know, it's a job they do.
It's hard for them to look holistically because they often don't have that conversation with their client, like, who is it you use for pensions? I just see in the company accounts that you make a contribution to, but I've got no idea what it's invested with or who.
Exactly that. And the same even like with most financial advisors. They have a sort of, you know, I don't mean to, might sound a little bit harsh, but, you know, they're looking to sort of extract that pension and get assets under management, which, you know, of course they are. But again, that's not always the very best thing. You're in property. A lot of my clients happen to be sort of landlords, you know, who are generally accidental landlords. But is property always the best answer?
Yeah.
It is in some aspects, but actually then you need a combination of things. And then you've got to make that tax efficient. So if they're not talking to each other and the other sort of industries around them, they're not sort of talking to each other, you only get that one thing from that one lane.
Yeah.
And then you have to piece together. So basically, I'll try and sit above. I'll present the options. I don't actually give people direct advice.
Yeah.
It's kind of, these are the options you could take. If any of them float your boat a little bit, let's explore it further with the relevant people.
And that is currently right now is just you doing that, presumably?
So actually I work very closely with a chap who I met about 18 months ago or so, who was doing it for another company. He's recently gone on his own, so we're actually kind of pooling resources very closely. But the sort of the future plan is to do it together. We are actually just looking at how that would work exactly. So yes, it's actually on a bit of a cusp of change.
Yeah, okay. And the relationship with the kind of introduction from the mortgage brokers and the rest, has that expanded over time? Is that kind of a good...
absolutely.
Because I find like it's good to have like multiple sources of
again,
being fed leads, if you like.
You find the different industries give you things at different levels and different areas. Mortgage brokers, by the natural kind of thing, they're generally the earlier stages of people, first-time buyers, new families. So you kind of get on board with a sort of fairly simple things. And of course, you know, we do that all day long. Brilliant. But then when I'm talking to them, generally they're in their maybe 30s, whatever, I'm thinking, what's their parent situation, other family members, other, you know, people around them, trying to network within that one lead. So mortgage brokers is more consistent, more kind of quick. Yeah. Obviously, financial advisors, they pass it over, particularly with the change. Obviously, the meeting we had last time here. Yeah. And the
if anybody hasn't seen that, go and link in the description below. The big budget meeting.
Yeah. You know, with some changes, obviously, with pensions and how that's going to look in the future, being brought into inheritance tax. That's brought a new wave of sort of conversations to be had, effectively. So IFAs are always a great source of leads, etc. And accountants. I do tend to find accountants are a bit more difficult nut to crack. They tend not to be quite as salesy or entrepreneurial, i.e. getting out there with their own clients so much sometimes. But when they realise it can be done and it works and it can bring them more things in the background, then it works really well. But they're a tough nut to crack.
Do you have any hookups with solicitors and stuff like that? Because I find those are quite often... I mean, we do a lot of work with solicitors, various different stuff, mainly around property, but we do litigation and so on like that. But often we get, I suppose, they're marketing letters of source, but they're not... I wouldn't say they're not good at marketing, but they do it in a very, very subtle way because I think they're worried about recommendations.
Always a problem. Yes, we do. So obviously some of the things that we produce we can't write ourselves because we're not SRA regulated. So we do a lot of trust work, etc. So we sort of pass that over to a number of solicitors to do that work. Getting stuff back. I mean, a lot of solicitors firms will have their own in-house estate planning sort of side of things. So not always as easy to sort of get business from them, but when you get close to somebody, they realise what you can do different to what, you know, they may be able to write their own wills and things, but they don't have that bigger ideas outside of that. Then you can get things back because actually, you know, some of it's a bit small for them to deal with. So we do, but not hugely. If that makes sense.
So I mean, looking at your kind of your list, your questions, if you like, we'll come on to the kind of like what your plan is and maybe some of the hurdles. But one of the things you got at the moment, you've got, well, we ask what do you do with your day-to-day, or what does your day-to-day look like in the business? You've got mix, visit clients, often evenings, complete the administration work, support the wheel writers and so on in your network. Yeah. And then the next question is, do you think you built a business? And you've said that, yes, it's a job up until recently where it's becoming more of a business. Do you find that it's grown enough for you to not perhaps be so involved? I mean, you've still got evening meetings and stuff, like you're kind of still in the business. I mean, I'm kind of alluding to some of your your longer term plans, I suppose. But
at the moment, yes. I mean, it's still almost entirely me. I have recently taken on a VA, somebody you know yourself.
Yeah.
So
it's okay. You can mention them. Okay. It's perfectly fine to do some subtle advertising.
Advertising. So through Laura.
Yeah. The We Group.
We Group. The lovely Cherry. So but that's literally brand new. And one of the problems I face, which you'll ask me in a bit, is actually passing information over and things like that. I've struggled with that a little bit, so that's been tough. And it's it's essential, and I know it's essential.
The delegate or letting go of it, or just
bit of both.
Bit of both.
And there's a real block somewhere which basically says, by the time I tell them what to do, I can do it myself.
Yes.
But then it's the second time, and the third time, and the 10th time you do it, you haven't had to do it.
Yeah.
But it's still a real struggle. So that's definitely...
It's not unusual, that. And it is hard for people to make that
leap.
Disconnect, especially when you've kind of done it yourself for so long.
And it's that... but what it's done, actually, is forcing me to produce some sort of, standard operating procedures, which I had in my head. I knew what I was doing, but then I've had to sort of... How do you tell someone else to do that? Which is quite time-consuming, but... Actually, it's been a fantastic process, and you realise actually a few things you don't do quite right, or there's a better way of doing it. So it has been a very worthwhile thing to do. So that I guess is really one of the biggest things at the moment. Okay. Go on. What else was in there? Ask me again.
So basically, we've got obviously you kind of, it feels a bit like sort of stuck in the business, but you're making moves towards kind of maybe trying to get out of it a little bit. Obviously, got to grow the business, take VA and all that kind of stuff. So it's moving in that sort of general direction, I suppose.
It is,
and
there's a plan in place, roughly. It's not been quite nailed down fully, but it's the first step. And when you run your own business, you're the dog's body. You've got to clean the toilets and speak to the managing director of such and such on any given day. But that's the first step, is just getting the admin away. Yeah,
definitely, you have, and I think the sooner you can do that kind of stuff, then it frees you up for stuff. And often you have to take those leaps before you may be able to afford them or are ready for them. And that's the entrepreneurial kind of spirit, if you like.
It's at what point does the finance make sense to do it?
Yeah, never makes sense. Or, if you do it at the right moment, I always think it never makes sense. Like, I've employed people going, I can't. I'm paying for you because there isn't the money to support you. But what it's going to allow me to do is go and do something else that's going to generate much more money than I would if I just stayed doing that sort of administration task.
Going back to a previous sort of career, I used to employ service engineers as part of what I was doing, and they earn fairly decent money as employed. But they would always get paid first. And then on a bad month, you might not earn as much. And that was always something that stuck in my head is actually, when you're outsourcing to these people, they get paid, you might not get paid. There's definitely, that's a little block I've got to get over.
Take the rough with the smooth
Absolutely,
Well, I think we'll segue nicely into your kind of more longer term plans and the issues there. So, So we'll move on now just to your kind of, I suppose your kind of goals, if you like, and maybe some of the hurdles. So for the audience, I've got your kind of immediate goals are to look to possibly with the JV company set over your company with a £1 million turnover and have some more 3 wheel writers in-house and a full-time administrator, so kind of growing the business essentially, and then then obviously a 3 to 5 year plan to double the business size, and then obviously look to retire out of it, or at least take less of a role in the day-to-day business. Some of the challenges you got is formal education for yourself, employing staff and letting go of the solopreneur attitude, and just generally getting stuff done. I think obviously your main plan is really, like a lot of business owners, to grow and then get to a point where you're working on the business, not in the business. The thing you say, formal education, for me, is holding you back getting to that stage. Let's explore that a little bit. What do you mean by that?
So we had a brief chat before we meet. So it's the imposter syndrome part of things, because there's no qualification specifically. There are qualifications you can get, and there are a couple of things that I'm working on this year to form part of that. You are relying on kind of experience and then other people's experience to sort of chip in where required. So, when you're dealing with a client, I'm salesy. I can talk to people. I can sort of make it sound, like I do know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I do mostly, but it's that last little bit you don't quite know the exact answer to, or you don't quite know a legal consequence or a financial consequence of sort of doing a couple of steps in a row. So you have to go out and source someone. And then, but that does lead to procrastination, which we're all, many of us are guilty of, just purely because actually you are talking about people's lives, or death in my case, more importantly. But it's big sums of money sometimes. It's people's property. It's people's everything for them. And
do you worry more about? Sorry to interrupt. Do you worry more about imposter syndrome from a kind of I'm not qualified to talk about this, or like, or more from a kind of, or this is like really important for your life, and am I advising you? Like,
it's that more definitive aspect of if you take all this advice, we are putting something specific in place, which can't be changed per se, but actually, should you pass away sooner rather than later, it's in place, and it's very, very difficult to change or to adapt. So we have to make sure, it's right. One of the things also is there is no right and wrong necessarily. There's just a better set of circumstances and a worse set of circumstances. So I'm taking advice from others, and like I said before, I'm bringing different people in to give me different bits of advice, which don't always have the same outcome. We mentioned solicitors; they're kind of really black and white. There's not a grey area, but actually life is in the grey area always. So they'll generally not actually say like a piece of advice, but they'll kind of say, well, if you do this, this could be the outcome, and if you don't do that, that's the outcome. So then I try and piece that together to give advice. And then so that sometimes is the problem. And then when you actually finalise that bit of advice and you charge a client, we were just talking about invoicing, weren't we? Yeah. I actually don't invoice clients quite often for a long time, because I'm worried about, once I've invoiced and they've paid me, then that thing's done, and there has to be that bit of advice that's correct. So that becomes a whole struggle. But
I suppose you touch on it really, and a piece of advice I would give to the audience about you saying there's no right or wrong to the advice, and advice is exactly that. It is your opinion, and you're professionally qualified to give that opinion at that moment in time, and it is only valid for that moment in time. Absolutely. Essentially, because they could leave your office, walk out, and something completely different happen down the road, and therefore the advice would be totally different. We do a lot of things like building valuations. So if your building was caught on fire and burnt completely down to the ground, you need to make sure that it's insured for the right amount. But when we give the price over to people, we say things like, we don't include VAT, because I've got no idea if VAT goes up, down, left, right, centre. If it's new build, there might be no VAT on some elements, so you've got to do the VAT yourself. Or not bother with the VAT if you want to, and it's only valid at the moment that really I measured the building, or we looked at it, or did the research. Next week, if there's raging inflation and all the price of everything goes up, then you'll need to look at it again. And it's important to make that disconnection between feeling like, I'm giving you this figure for the valuation and I feel a bit like I also need to tell you that it could change, and it's actually, I'm not even sure if it's really the right figure. Well, actually, you've done your calcs, that's the figure, and the fact that the second that they put the policy in place, it could be irrelevant at that time. It's not in your control, is it? So,
and it's very different. So when I'm dealing with somebody who's say mid-30s, fairly young family, possibly more children coming along, other changes, they're moving, they're doing things. If I'm talking to a 70-year-old client, probably not going to have more children unless they're, Robert De Niro, but these things become less likely. So it's very adaptive. And sadly, of course, a 70-year-old, they're looking at what that life expectancy is. In their 30s, you're not really. You're hoping you're going to make it to the 70s, 80s, and so on. So but people sadly get hit by buses. As we always say here. So it's what would happen in the next sort of couple of years, really, I guess, is our time frame. When you're 30, when you're 70, we're kind of looking at it as a bit of an end game.
So, I mean, the imposter syndrome, how much do you think that kind of holds you back from maybe moving away from this kind of solopreneur? And because in the break we mentioned about like letting go of stuff and delegating, and they're very similar kind of topics often, like the imposter syndrome. Should I grow my business? Can I do that? Exactly. What about my clients and all that kind of stuff?
A big part, really, I guess, is a big part in having the faith to do it yourself. Because it's an expensive business, you're investing in yourself. But I've done quite a lot of self-development work, particularly in that sort of time when I had a couple of years out. I actually spent a lot of time doing self-development stuff. So I know all the answers, but that doesn't always necessarily mean you take them on board yourself and kind of sort of get through them. But it's a big thing.
How do you deal with the delegation side of things then? Because it's often I find that like that kind of imposter syndrome is very much married to the inability to pass tasks on. You mentioned that obviously you've got the VA business and the rest of it, but to make the next leap up where maybe like some of your existing clients or new ones are not so involved with you personally, that's quite hard from a delegation point of view.
I guess I'm not fully there yet where I would necessarily be passing over clients at this very stage, but I know it's coming. Hence why, I said, actually, I want to sort of take on some will writers. I said before, you start as a will writer, that's the very basics of the business, but that is the day-to-day, sadly, slightly more mundane end of things. So when I did my education, one of the reasons I went back and did the course again on in-house was actually to pick up a few newbies, people who were kind of new to the industry. And I've stayed in contact with them and I help them. I do quite a lot of support with them right now, which has been really good actually for that kind of overcoming these things, because I do think teaching somebody else is one of the best ways to sort of understand your own failings and look at where you can improve, etc. So they're running their own businesses shortly, but they're sort of people that I want to start bringing in to do that bit of work. Okay. So I kind of have been doing it in the background, but not quite officially. So that's kind of the next step, is bringing them in. But the exact path of doing that is still a little bit up in the air for me personally.
So with one of your things, you say getting stuff done.
Yes, it's not the exact words I use, but
it isn't. No, it begins with an S. Slightly edited for you two. But I guess the question is, so what are you going to actually do or what's your plan to grow the business to the point where you can employ these staff or get these people involved? I mean, I said to you in the break, like I've always been fairly at one with almost saying like I'm taking that person on, it's actually coming out of my own back pocket for the meantime. I've kind of always been at one with that, doing that almost like I know that I might not get paid for a while or paid less anyway. So I'm getting that person in before perhaps I needed them. But so what's the kind of plan on growing? Because we haven't really touched on that. Like how are you going to get these more clients in and I suppose use your USP, which because there's lots of people that write wills. It's as saturated as any other market, but I don't think I know anybody that kind of takes that holistic overview. So that's your USP.
Absolutely, I think so. Yeah, we've not come across many who do that more side of it. So as I've kind of grown, my client has sort of grown with me and become a sort of more high-paying client. So I've kind of transitioned up that scale a little bit, which has given me some more kind of income.
Yeah.
So actually, I now know, I've taken on a VA, I can afford to do that. And in fact, stupid not to do it, really, basically. So that was the sort of the first step, and that will allow me to go out and do more networking and be a little bit more efficient at my networking, which will allow me to get a couple more clients. How can I put it? It's reasonably well paid per client.
Yeah.
So I don't need hundreds and hundreds of clients. I would rather have tens of very good ones than hundreds of not.
Yeah, definitely. You need the few.
Absolutely. But when I take on another will writer, I'll have that space open to take on maybe not hundreds, but multiple tens of the slightly simpler clients, which will pay for him and put a bit more money in the coffers at the same time, or her. And, it would then grow. So I do want to go sort of organically. I'm not looking to have huge investment. But I am looking at, so one of my consultants basically runs sort of a tax consultancy side of the business. I'm looking to do some sort of JV work directly with them, and bring a few things in-house again, really, which, I'm currently just outsourcing, which would be another slight arm to it, because, again, that's quite lucrative. I suppose I'm trying to be clever, not sort of like acquiring businesses per se, but kind of JVing in with a few, which will allow...
You're forming partnerships with people to extend your offering. Basically.
Exactly that.
Yeah, which is a really good way of expanding, especially without too much commitment, because if it doesn't pan out, you haven't really lost anything or whatever. I get all of that. I think the more admin you can get rid of, the better.
100%.
I know you.
I'm not the best at it. Yeah.
It is difficult. I mean, I had problems giving away the invoicing side of our business when we were quite small, just because it felt like it was a great responsibility for me to make sure we were paid, and therefore I could pay the staff. Yeah. So passing that over to somebody to deal with without really any input and turning me more into a numbers and figures person was quite a challenge for me. Okay. I don't think that's unusual, but you have to let go in order to do that, because I can't then, like, for instance, I can't dedicate time to do podcasts and stuff. I mean, they don't really earn us any money. They're nice to talk to business owners and get exposure and learn more about people's businesses and stuff, and impart a bit of knowledge. But I can only do that because I've given away all of my kind of admin task, and I mean, like, I've never done a VAT return ever. Okay. Not literally because I don't want to pay the VAT man, but I've never done one myself. Yeah. That's ever since we've been VAT registered. I've always given that away to somebody. I might have locked up a couple of times, but generally speaking, that's only because I'm staying later than other people. I don't actually have keys to all the offices either. So, and stuff like that, really, because I'm like, I don't want to be in that mix. I don't want to be someone they're relying upon to lock up the shop. I don't want to be someone that will do, the VAT return can be done because so-and-so's on holiday. Yeah. Well, no, you can do it before you go on holiday. You have to plan your own work. Yeah. So I think that stuff is like really important, and I know you mentioned the VA stuff, and I know that's a business that I'm involved with. But one of the clients in there, I remember when they came on, they were using Cherry as well. Yeah. And they're charging like £100 an hour for their services, and they're paying us like a fraction of that. And they were like, we're seeing like 4 or 5 times more clients, and like it pays for your service like tenfold over.
And you say it, and it makes all logical sense, but there's still a little something inside you that's just going, again, it's what's your own worth. And I think actually a piece of maybe advice I'd give to lots of people is actually work out what your hourly rate is. And it's different for all different people. Yeah. And it's difficult to actually work it out. But what are you worth? And if you can pay someone else to do it less, and as much as Cherry's lovely, we're paying her less. It's
stop doing £15 an hour tasks.
Even to the point of getting a cleaner in at home and things. Yeah, get the cleaner in.
Massive. Yeah,
just because he's got time for that.
get your cleaner in, people to do your bookkeeping,
Absolutely, yeah.
any general administration tasks that you can do. You need to stop doing £15 an hour tasks and see what you're worth.
And actually, we were talking I think before this about getting a driver in. If you go to different meetings, the amount of time. I love driving, so actually, I quite happy to drive somewhere, but occasionally I have to go up north or somewhere. Yeah. And you're thinking that's 3-4 hours in the car up, 3-4 hours in the car back for one meeting. That suddenly cost you,
a whole day's worth of work,
hundreds of pounds. Yeah. But if you could, the train's not always that convenient. But if you can, get a chauffeur, do those things,
exactly,
they make sense.
I think the train is like a happy medium ground for most folk. Like I will always get the train to London rather than drive, just because it's an hour and a half-ish, hour maybe, and I can work in that time. But in the next league up, you would have a driver because you can sit in the back of the car working. Yes. Yeah, indeed. We're all aiming for that. But I definitely think in order to get that imposter syndrome and get you into that thing and believe that you can do it, you definitely need to move away from those kind of £15 an hour tasks, that smaller mindset of kind of going, that won't get done properly unless I do it, or I'll teach that, or I'll keep doing it.
It'll get done better probably.
Yeah.
In reality,
it will,
because
your time will be spent somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I could, even though I joke and say I've never done a VAT return, I'm not sure I could actually do it anyway. No. Like I know it's all automated, so I could probably figure out fairly tech savvy, but I don't want to be in that position where I'm having to do the VAT return or look through everything.
And this thing leads into kind of like this sort of the semi-retirement plan. I don't necessarily want to not be involved in the business at all going forward as part of my succession plan. And I've got a daughter, so I want to leave something to her down the line. But to be able to be in it sort of one day a week, just kind of keep your mind active and things, and then on the golf course maybe the other few days, that kind of thing. That's really the long
and I
term.
think at that point, you can do as you please. Then that's when you've got to the point where you're working on your business, not in it. Whether you're choosing to work on your business or not. I mean, I'm cut from a funny cloth where if I have some free time, I'll find something else to do with it because it's fun and I like that. But I always know in the back of my head I could just stop doing stuff and then be like, I'll just do that and, sit in the sun if I wanted to. I don't wake up and think, like, some days the diary's quite full, but if I had to cancel everything in the diary because I didn't feel very well, that's just what happens. Nothing is actually in there that's like life imperative. There might be the odd thing where it's like my input's needed on that in order for someone else to do something, but it's definitely getting to that position, it then allows you to focus on all the things that you're not doing very well or other business opportunities. So
perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so I think to kind of wrap that up, I suppose really the imposter syndrome thing. I know a lot of people get that, and I wouldn't kind of hang on it too much. Try and as much as you can build those moats around your business. So go to things that like a higher barrier to entry, like the experience. People can't beat qualifications, even if somebody else can do it without a qualification. That's your USP, your selling point, that you're actually qualified, unlike say Joe Bloggs, who's not qualified. And that delegation stuff as well. Like really, you got to get away from the £15 an hour tasks because they are not a good productive use of your time, and they will hold you back as well.
My worst job is going to the post office. Having to take several it'd be worth paying someone a small just to take that one job off my hands. It's crazy.
But again, I think all that sort of stuff you can outsource to people. Even the post office stuff, you can get them to come and collect it from you. So I think if you impart that kind of vision of like, I only doing the most profitable and important tasks, of which sometimes that is just choosing the direction of your business and running it and turning up to those networking events. So
thank you.
I think I mean that's what I would do. The medicine.
You're ahead of me, definitely. So you're in a place where I would like to be soon. So definitely.
And it's up to you what you do when you get there. Like me, I could choose not to do this or do anything at all, but I enjoy it. So that's quite nice. But I definitely look at those sort of things and see if you can impart that, and then that will help you move on to that kind of being able to work on it, not in it all the time.
And that's it's exactly right. It's easy. I like to try and say that to other people. Doing it slightly different. But I'm getting there.
It is. I mean, I get
yeah.
dragged in and someone every now and then, so it's not perfect.
No.
But you know,
Definitely
it's probably as
forward.
close as I'm ever going to get to it. So yeah. Right, we'll sort of look at wrapping up there, but normally towards the end, I'll just ask if there was any questions you had for me or anything else that you wanted to chat about or whatever, just before we wrap up.
Again, literally just sort of saying, you know, you're in a position of where I would like to be in, you know, a few years' time. In reality, I think is realistic. You've given some great advice, obviously, on getting rid of those things. What's the one thing you would tell everybody? Not necessarily me. You would tell everybody.
Well, I'm obviously a big fan of making sure you delegate things out to people, especially when they can do it a lot better than you. That I think holds back a lot of people from seeing their dreams through or getting to that point and believing that you can do it. And obviously I also touched upon the fact that sometimes you have to employ people or take a step when you feel you're not ready for it, but you have to believe in yourself. Like how many personal guarantors I've signed and various times I've employed people when I probably couldn't really afford them or it's come out of my wages and I've been like, do you know what, I believe in myself. I'm going to make this work. And it doesn't always work. No. You know, 1 in 10, I'm like, that didn't really work and that's that. But you pick yourself back up again and learn from those lessons and then go, right, I won't do that again next time. I'll do it slightly different.
Have you ever had a business coach?
I have had a few business coaches work with me over the years, and I do a lot of kind of watching other podcasts and other business coach type people and the rest of it. But I'm a big fan of that kind of self-development type stuff. I read a lot of books and things and stuff like that. But I've coached a few people as well.
And that's one of my problems. I kind of know the coaching techniques. Don't listen to them. I do struggle occasionally.
It is hard, and I find coaching is a very much a kind of solopreneur type job to do. It's not scalable.
It's time for money, isn't it?
For me, it doesn't really doesn't scale properly.
No.
Like I've been asked to talk at events and paid like 200 quid for talk for like 45 minutes, and I'm thinking, that's good money, But then I'm like, but it involves me going there, I've got to park up, I've got to think about what I'm going to say and the rest of it, and then, you know, and still do it and come across and the rest of it. Absolutely. And then I'm like, actually, I probably could have spent less time and earned 200 quid somewhere else by dealing with a problem in the business or something.
But it's a lucky position where you're, you know, it's exposure, it's getting and talking to people and networking. I guess that you've got to add all that on, haven't you, these days?
I mean, we looked at some dinner stuff as well, where we had like collective mind of a few people. Business owners would come and then they would talk to us about their businesses and their plans, and we would have looked at it all, and they paid quite a premium, like £400 to come for like a 3 or 4 hour strategy session just about their business. Essentially, maybe you'd have like a small group of 6, and you'd have like coaches, you know, financial people, people dealing with mortgages, all that kind of stuff. So it's, you know, it was a good mind thing. But then you also look at that and you just think, I don't know, actually, like I might be going, I got a nice meal and 500 quid out of it, but actually could I have done something even more productive with my time? So you evolve over time as well. So,
but it's not. I do think giving back is a little bit of importance. You need to give back.
Well, I talk for free at some events and things. Nice. Like I don't necessarily look to charge now, whereas that's a different model for me. I'm more like, the exposure's great here. I'll just come on and talk or sit on a sofa and someone might ask me about property or my journey or something like that.
This, or being an authority is a key topic right now, isn't it? Being an authority on your subject. So.
What's the Daniel Priestley's being a master of your own subject thing, isn't it? Yeah, or whatever.
And then you have to do those things to get that out there. So,
exactly.
That's again, social media and things I'm not that big on at the moment. It's something I've got to get into. Something I've got to pay someone to get into because I can't do it myself.
Yeah,
that's not
exactly.
A job for me.
Well, I don't know how to edit videos and the rest of it. That's what we have a
Who
team
does
here
it for you?
I don't know. Maybe the people behind the lens. You know, we're fairly good on social media nowadays. But like you, I wasn't particularly au fait with it, but I think it's a good way of people getting to meet you and exposing you and the rest of it nowadays. It's almost like a given. Someone said to me, it's like exercise. You don't really want to do it, but you know you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to sort of go back to a thing is everyone's I was going to use the word crap. Everyone's crap when they start.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, you've got to build into these things. So
we learn so much.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody that looks back through our back catalogue of videos, we're probably knocking on best part of 100 videos now on this channel, as well as the other bits that we do. The early day stuff is not as good quality as it is now because we've evolved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the key thing to get across to other people is, you can't expect to be fantastic from day one. You've got to learn and grow. Yeah. Brilliant.
Well, it's been lovely having you on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Wish you all the best. And hopefully maybe we'll have a chat in a year's time, see if you've managed to kind of delegate some staff, maybe get some staff in and kind of start
that would be a good, what's the word looking for?
It's a good KPI.
I'll say accountancy. What's the word? Accountability, that's the word. A good accountability thing. Put me in for this time next year.
Yeah,
done.
Yeah.
All right,
done.
Perfect. Yeah,
see where you got to.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
Good
right, lovely having you on, Karl.
Thank you very much, sir.
Cheers.
Thank you.
So hopefully that's been really, really useful to everybody. It's really been great getting stuck in with Karl and seeing his kind of holistic overview of trying to join in all the different trades and the rest of it. I don't think he's fully pulling on his USP at this moment in time. He needs to learn how to delegate all that kind of stuff out to people and make sure that he's getting really far away from those £15 an hour tasks as we discussed. So hopefully that's going to be really useful for anybody that suffers with a bit of imposter syndrome and you struggle with delegation. And I think getting rid of those two things is a real key to success. So it'd be really interesting to see where Karl is in about a year's time. Hopefully he's kind of mastered some of those things and then move forward leaps and bounds with his business. So if you really like this video, did you know you can come on the show completely and utterly free? You can even have all the content you just watched for your own social media channels completely free. We don't charge a penny for any of this at all. I just love talking to business owners, imparting a bit of my wisdom, learning a bit about theirs, looking at the problems and trying to come up with some sort of key influential tips for you guys. So if that's a bit of you, head over to our website, matthewcox.biz, fill in the form on the contact us page, get on the show and, really see how you can grow your business.